Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to another episode of Futsal868 Corner Talks. My name is Geoffrey Edwards, series moderator and president of the Futsal Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Futsal868 Corner Talks is an online meetup series where global sporting professionals share their experiences and perspectives on the fastest growing indoor sport in the world, futsal. Our main objective is to sensitize and educate sport stakeholders on the sport of futsal and other pressing local and global issues. Today, in episode 31, Futsal868 discusses sports marketing. Our guests include Ms. Carole Beckford, Jamaican native and sports marketing specialist. Good day, Ms. Beckford.
Hi, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Up next is Senior Manager, Business Development at the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago, my former classmate and good friend, Mr. Kairon Serrette. Good day, Kairon.
Hi, good afternoon. Good day, Jeffrey. Good afternoon, Carole.
Let me just make a quick adjustment because, of course, my guest needs to be on top. So I'm going to make a quick adjustment. There we go. Much better. So let's go straight into it, guys, as regards to sports marketing. And yes, I know that you all are brilliant minds and you all are these specialists when it comes to sports marketing in the Caribbean. More so, Carole, for years you have dedicated your life to making sure that sporting brands and properties in the Caribbean are better. So I ask the question, simple enough, what is sport marketing?
Sports marketing is really packaging sport in the most credible way possible, meaning, what exists. So if it's an athlete, you match their performance with what they're doing off the field. So it's putting the best of what the product has to offer. So it's the performance on the field, the performance off the field, and how those things can go together to make a tremendous product that you can earn from. So an athlete by his or herself may be excellent at their craft, football, track and field, swimming, volleyball, futsal. But if they don't have the necessary resources to back that, the attributes, meaning they're a people person, they attract audiences outside of who watch them play sport, and they're not able to be successful in that term. So sports marketing is really that, ensuring that performance on and off the field complement each other in a way that they can earn.
Kairon, being the senior manager of business development, how does sport marketing fit into the whole conversation we're having here that relates to how does business of sport and development and sport development?
All right, so well, first off, I want to congratulate you, Geoffrey. I didn't realize it's 31 episodes already.
Yes.
Futsal868 Corner Talks. So that is no mean feat. So congrats. In my opinion and experience to date, the sports marketing is an integral part of just driving the whole concept of sport business. So Carole would have mentioned in terms of matching on the field and on the field performance, and I think it's just to add on to that. I think it's also important to speak about what it is we're essentially trying to do in terms of we are trying to make somebody make a purchasing decision, right? Whether it is the sponsor, right, to say that, okay, cool, this investment, this property, and I'm very heartened that you use the word property. This property makes sense investing in because we see it's going to have potential to help us reach our target market. We talk about purchasing decision. We have a team, or an athlete, and there's an event. Sport marketing is going to help drive that purchasing decision to buy a ticket so that they can come and consume the sport. If they want to watch it on TV, the sports marketing is going to help drive the person or the purchasing decision to watch it on TV or the ad person or whatever. So I think in taking that slant in terms of the business side, that is also how I see sports marketing in terms of creating a proper mix to influence a purchasing decision. And as I say, you have different levels. It could be the consumer, and even the corporate person you can refer to as a consumer, because at the end of the day, you want them to consume the sport and say, you know what, I think this makes sense for me to put my dollars behind. In the same way, just a normal fan, I'm gonna buy a Futsal868 jersey or Futsal868, because I've felt enough or made this association with the property.
Carole, you have mentioned some of the stakeholders in sport along with Kairon in your opening remarks and the questions that you just answered. What are the key relationships in sport marketing that needs to be had? And how can Caribbean sporting organizations maintain such relations through sports marketing?
All right. So the first question is that it's really a fan engagement type of world now. And fans are, before COVID, you want people in the stadiums, you want people in the venues, you want people at the poolside to be watching. So you want people to be watching the sport live. But what you also have is that those who watch on, like we're on YouTube now, broadcasting live, we want people to watch on small screens, big screens. So an important mix is your audience. And you appeal to the different audiences based on what you do on the field or on the track. Uh, but the important thing is that we must do the research to find out. So the answer to the second question is now that we have to research who these people are. What we find is that when audiences are changing and growing in the other spaces for the sports that we watch so much, they have research. They know that 40 to 45 years old are people who will come to the venues, but certainly the 18 to 24-year old will watch on a tablet, on a telephone. So we have to do the research to find out what we need to do to appeal to those audiences and to ensure that whatever product we have, it is broadcast to them. And that's particularly important. Our associations, it's funny because the third book I have coming up, I did some research on that. And we don't have a lot of that information available in the region where we have research. The crowd or the audience is different in Trinidad and Tobago versus Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, and so on. And it is important that when we're moving around to the region, we understand how the audiences want to operate to be able to deliver to them in a meaningful way.
It's interesting that you say we do have that data because Karen, I know that you all are doing some work with the Trinidad Tobago TTCSI. You could give me the acronym for that a little bit later. But tell us, how is the sport company of Trinidad Tobago trying to be able to fill the gap that Carole is now facing as regards to data when it comes to making proper marketing decisions? And how can national governing bodies and national sporting organizations assist you all and assist organizations such as Carole and writers such as Carole to be able to speak to sport marketing so that we could be able to be better at it?
Coalition of service industries, and what will be engaging them in the first instance. This first engagement is to really help us to get a snapshot of what the sport industry looks like in Trinidad and Tobago in first instance. So we want to get an idea of people, how they consume sport, as Carole said, in terms of what sponsors are involved, who are the people playing these sports, and so on. Sport company as as a state agency, and even through my role as business development, we see where the gaps are. Bearing in mind, like everyone else, we have our challenges, resources. So we are attempting to have strategic partnerships that help us deliver. I was smiling when Carole was talking in terms of understanding that data for the consumers, because I know we don't have that understanding of who it is consumes the sport, who it is it the 18 to 24 male and how they male or female, and how do they prefer to view or consume the sport. All of that sort of information is key, and why I'm harping on it as well is that oftentimes when we have to approach corporate, right? If you look at the US model or the international, we always look at the US as the gold standard, for want of a better word, of sport tourism. While we don't, a lot of times, don't really appreciate all of the work that goes into, as Carole mentioned, getting the research of each individual person and why this segment makes sense for this corporate entity to become involved or to invest in this property. And one of one of the things we hope to achieve, again, it's not going to be done in the first year, is have that at least begin that process so that when I'm speaking to RBC, if if not, maybe not a sport company, but even advising a national governing body of sport and saying, listen, when you go to a corporate entity, you need to be in a position to state who's your group, who's your audience right now, right? What is your scale? How many people play your sport? How many people view your sport? What are the ages of the persons that view your sport? Where do they come to the finals? Do they hit you up on social media and so on? So all in all, that all of that information is going to be key because you're now going to take this information to help sell yourself, right? It be to the corporate or, as I said, to get more people involved.
That leads me to a very important question. Being our sport being our sport marketing specialist, tell me what are the best practices when it comes to sport marketing, generally speaking, and how can national sporting organizations and national governing bodies in the Caribbean reach that level of best practice? I know it's a loaded question, but in this segment, as we always say, is the theoretical aspect of it. And Kairon mentioned about social media, and we have a lot to go into that when it comes to the meat and bones in the next segment. But what is the best practices when it comes to sport marketing?
Well, you must collect the data through your membership. So at least your membership should be able to give you an idea of who you're targeting. So subscriptions, you must keep in touch with your audience, your spectator, your spectator sample. When you have live matches, when you broadcast your matches on television, the station should be able to give you data. So the collection of data is important. Also, what's important is as simple as you take it. You remember those days? Certainly, when I used to watch sport back in the day, you'd get a little sheet asking you two or three questions about something. What time of the day would you prefer the matches are played? If you're watching it on TV, what time would you want to see it on, and so on. And just some basic things. So you do surveys, questionnaire. We have all those tools now. I mean, Survey Monkey has a fabulous tool. But to get that information, you must have your subscription, your subscribers, and your membership in tow. It is important to collect data about everything. The people that come, who they take to the games, what time, how much money they'd prefer to pay, that kind of a thing. Um, do you prefer weekend tournament? And so when you collect that, you're able to then say, my sport is followed mainly by, and my secondary audience is, and my tertiary audience is, and then these are the best times of matches on weekdays. These are the best times of matches on weekends. And if I were to watch it on television, this is when I'd like. So what you start getting, it's a trend. And those are the words that are used in the markets. So the important thing is to collect information, and you use the opportunity to do that. How you do that also, we have academic institutions that study sport and management. Use those students to volunteer in your organization. It is something that I don't understand why in the region we don't get our students more involved. They will do it for the grade, that's the first thing. But if they're doing it for a semester, for 15 weeks, they must at least win over something. They can't just be arbitrarily coming to a football or a netball or a soccer game, football game, just to collect information. You're going to win them over as a fan. So you're going to access as much resources as you possibly can using your subscribers, using your interns, and the people who follow your organization.
Which, and that's brilliant to hear, Carole. But to me, that sounds like a lot of work. And I think that a lot of national governing bodies and national sporting organizations, I mean, I love it. I understand it. I understand from a theoretical standpoint, but I'm going to be devil's advocate here. A lot of people are going to say, Carole, that's real work. I have no time for that. We are organization that have, I mean, I speak to volunteers, but we are organization whereby the executives are volunteers. Where I going to get, that sounds like a lot of money. How are we going to do that? Kairon, I ask this question to you because we are people as well who follow, as the old people say, follow fashion monkey. Which sporting properties or organizations, global and Caribbean, can other national sporting organizations and national governing bodies can look to follow in terms of best practices and in terms of what Carole just described, to giving some very key and important concepts and ideas to said individuals, said organizations, to practice to follow?
So Jeffrey, I think you made a key point there at the start in terms of resources, and I think Carole also alluded to that in terms of it requires a lot of resources. When people think about this whole concept of marketing, of sport marketing, often you would hear when sometimes you might have a conversation, or at least in Trinidad context, why the pro league and this, and everybody has all the ideas, and I think people don't realize how much resources should be dedicated or has to be dedicated if you want to execute a proper marketing plan. And I'll go even further to refer to it as an integrated marketing and communications plan, because you can't do the marketing without the communications. You have to, you're going to be doing these things, and you have to be able to tell the story and reach out to the stakeholders. Again, those resources that are required. I mean, sometimes you might get lucky in a sporting organization, and you're right. A lot of them are volunteers. They may not have it. Carole also alluded to, why don't we use the students at the universities? I would say I could say sport company right now is looking into that to see how we could attempt to close the gap. But what I've also seen, and when I say close the gap in terms of bringing the students closer to the NGBs, but what I've also seen is that that acceptance sometimes is not what you would want it to be, because bringing an outsider into an organization, and then there's a certain level of trust that is required for them to run with certain aspects of the sport. So then we're going to have some teething process, some teething stages, I imagine so. But at the end of the day, it requires a lot of resources. As I said, I'll go even further with regards to the communication aspect of it. You asked about international properties. I think it'll be difficult for me to tell, I don't know, the Aquatic Association of Trinidad Tobago to look at Arsenal, which I hope they're winning right now, to look at Arsenal, look at Arsenal's marketing department and follow that. I think that would be unfair, because I know the association might have one person, or even if they have a committee dedicated to marketing, and it's not even going to be continuous marketing. It might be event-based, because they might have a championships coming up, and they want to do that. So the whole concept of marketing and you asked about the NGBs, it is a continuous process. It requires planning, it requires resources, and then it requires proper execution. Just to go a little further in terms of stakeholders and what I would say for the NGBs, and I'm sure we'll get to this later on too, in terms of using what is available, right? A proper marketing plan. We know the challenges NGBs face. Well, NSOs, NGBs, it's not just Trinidad, it's not just Jamaica, it's not just the Caribbean. A lot of them don't have the extra finance, right? So what it is, it's going to be a situation of being as creative as possible, forming relationships. A lot of the things that Carole mentioned, I agree with in terms of understanding your base. I mean, finding out how many people play a sport and your primary, secondary, tertiary audiences is not going to be that expensive if depending on how you approach it. But in terms of getting the necessary airtime, making friends, as I call it, with the journalists, with the media, because the media in this regard is going to be a key component or a key stakeholder to this entire sport marketing ecosystem, especially for the national governing bodies, which we interface with on a regular basis.
Carole, I see that your hand is by your chin, and you were shaking when Kairon said certain things. I want to bring you into that conversation, that Kairon. Kairon he talked about Arsenal, so he played a 1-2 to your Carole. So I wanted to finish off here with me on goal, but I also would like you to speak a little bit, because I know there's a whole different topic, and we're going to have a topic on this eventually. I want you to add to that, to Kairon's point, but speak a little bit as to how does governance fit into this whole concept of sports marketing? Because I'm sensing that the more we speak is the more we have to understand. Our NSOs and NGBs need to understand how they could fit in sports marketing into their whole governance structure. Carole?
All right. So, first of all, I think we're too hierarchical in our structure in the Caribbean. We have way too many layers. And so some of the people, because the generation is changing, but it's happening everywhere. I don't think some of the people who we want to attract to the sport are engaged because they figure, in Jamaica, they say pure old people still involved in the sport, meaning older, more mature people. What I find happening is that they don't want to feel left out. And they figure that they need to be following certain basic rules. So let me use the students as an example. If you engage University of Trinidad and Tobago sports department, you must have somebody in your team organized, either through your secretariat, your gen sec, or your head of marketing, that can collect that data and use one person. You're not going to give them access to your national federation. But what I find is that the governance structure, everybody, it's too multi-layered. And what is happening is that while you have to be accountable, it is easier when people feel that all of them are contributing equally. So you go towards a flatter organization as opposed to the ones that we probably join the sport in. So accountability is such a massive thing now in sports that we can't but do the right thing. And I think one of the things we have to move across from is that we have to be more open to getting people who are from what we call outside, because a lot of us don't make the transformation from being athletes to sports administrators. So that's the first thing. And internationally, what they're doing as benchmark is to have, for like legal, you have an attorney. For finance, you have people who are working in organizations as a CFO or as an accountant. And for the other things, you're getting professionals. So it's no longer about just voting for a friend to get into the organization because I'm carrying a slate. It's really to get individuals. So, and with that, you don't need a platform to go levels by levels. You just need a flatter organization because everybody's contributing equally. The president's general secretary and treasurer are the three most important in an organization, and the rest should be all on one category. So I think, while we're doing the sports marketing, we should be also flattening our organization. I heard Kairon made an example about event based. We need to get into the heads of the people that sport is not an event. Sport requires planning, consistent planning, goal by goal, objective by objective. And it must be towards, it's almost like a pyramid. So am I going to the World Cup of football? What do I need to go to get there? Am I going to the World Cup of volleyball, World Cup of netball, and whatever? So it must be planned from the bottom up, and the goals must be stripped. And if within a year of reaching the World Cup, because they have qualifiers and so on, we must be able to meet our goals in order to get there. So it can't be done by a hierarchy. It must be that people feel equal. So while we're fixing marketing and getting the product ready, the structure of the organization must meet it halfway at least.
Most definitely. And we're going to take a quick break, but two things we're going to touch on after the break is sports marketing in the grassroots. I know that's your topic, Kairon, and social media when it comes to marketing, as well as the love marks. Many persons want to know what's the love marks. It's not Valentine's. It's Christmas time. It's not February 14th. But we'll be talking that soon. You're watching Futsal 868 Corner Talks on a Sunday, episode 31. Miss Beckford in Jamaica, Mr. Serrette in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be right back.
Hello coaches, good afternoon. I'm Sergio Gargelli, Futsal Solution Instructor. I will be one of your instructors in the next Futsal 868 course. I'm ready to start. See you soon next weekend.
Welcome back to Futsal 868 Corner Talks on Sunday. You know we are usual spot 4 p.m. every Sunday. And as you saw, we do a little bit of marketing ourselves. We try. That is Sergio Gargelli, the head coach of the China's national futsal team, who is partnered with the Futsal 868 brand to be able to do our virtual coaching education series. With the second cycle of the introduction started yesterday, Coach Sergio will be with our guests next week, with our participants next week, Saturday. So if it is you're still interested in being a part, shoot us an email, futsaltt@gmail.com, or drop us a line via WhatsApp, 1-868-78-SPORT. That's 1-868-787-7678. Brought to you by the Futsal 868 brand. So as we were saying, sports marketing. Just before the break, we said we were going to speak to sports marketing and the grassroots. Kairon, tell us more to your thoughts as regards to sports marketing to the grassroots, especially since Ms. Beckford would have ended by talking to a bottom-up approach. And when it comes to sports, we know the pyramid of sport, where athletes are the bottom, but we can't reach the top unless we speak to grassroots. Your thoughts, sir?
That's Jeffrey. So I also feel quite strongly about that because again, I get the impression at times that there isn't enough focus on how sports are marketed, right? Carole mentioned in terms of understanding, your market and so on, but we also, in terms of the grassroots side and getting persons involved in sport. So, for instance, how does rugby market their sport? And I'm talking in terms of on a grassroots level to get, I don't have the data, but if you go on World Data, they talk about mothers making the decisions on what events, on what sports the kids will get involved in. How does rugby market themselves as a form of health and wellness in terms of togetherness and so on and so forth, strength, etc., etc. How do they tell their story? And I'm just using rugby as an example. How do they tell the story further to Carole's point in terms of these are our goals. In 4 years' time, once you get involved, we hope to be Caribbean champions. We hope to be RAN champions. We hope to be competing for qualification to, sevens of the Olympics or the World Cup and so on. Because all of that is involved in the marketing. With marketing from the grassroots and it goes straight up, you want people to be a part of the journey, right? And by being able to explain to them what this pathway is, I think, people like the story. For instance, if I'm a parent and there's a sport, again, I'm just using rugby as the example because sometimes you might approach a parent and say, what about rugby? And their impression or their brand or their perception of what rugby is nah, boy, that's too rough. I don't want my child, that break hand. But no, there are other things with regards to sport. Yes, the sport has its, it's different to other sports. Every sport has a fair bit of risk in it. But in terms of how it is you communicate, the benefits of being in your sport. And I think from a grassroots level, the NGBs need to do a better job of telling that story. Getting more young ladies involved in netball. How do you tell that story? How do you tell them the benefits of this sport in terms of like the social benefits, the physical benefits, the opportunities, and then what we want to achieve as a collective, right? So just to close out because I could go on about it. I think it's also a critical component of the entire sports marketing. I'll use the word again, ecosystem, or at least that process in terms of how do we get more persons playing our sports, and once we get their interest and the purchasing decision, now you must have the distribution, you must have the opportunity for them to now play. So if I go on this campaign to get more young ladies playing netball, I need to be also in a position to say, well, all right, now that I have these 100, 200 group of girls who want to play, where are they going to play? And making sure now you have an opportunity now to funnel them into different teams and so on, and then you have the events and tournaments and so on.
You're quite correct. And you mentioned two things that stuck out to me: brand awareness and perception. And, starting a new sport such as futsal in Trinidad Tobago, and Kairon, you were part of this journey with me from the beginning. Just for our viewers to know, even though he didn't put on his beautiful bio, is that, Kairon was one of our first general secretaries. And one of the things that he always said was, Geoffrey, everybody at that point in time, we were 2 to 3 years old, and everybody wanted us to have a league. We were bombarded by organizations and individuals with their own modus operandi to have us a league. And Kairon said it correctly. He said, Geoffrey, how can we have a league if there is no brand awareness and brand perception? If nobody knows about the sport? And he broke it down in terms of we need to educate coaches, we need to educate fans, we need to educate our players before we can even reach the end product of a league. And I think that's one of the things that you're saying. But Carole, in doing some research, in his book Love Marks: The Future Beyond Brands, Kevin Roberts stressed for the creation of products and experiences that will create long-term emotional relationship with consumers, which speaks to the point of Kairon that brand perception and brand awareness is important. Mr. Roberts advocates infusing brands with three fundamental love mark elements: mystery, sensuality, and intimacy. Sounds like a Mills and Boons. Mystery enters by joining the past, present, and future, the value of myth and icons, and the powers of inspiration. And by tapping into dreams, sensuality and the five senses can be used to locate touch points with consumers. Intimacy is created through commitment, empathy, and passion. The power of these dynamic forces is captivatingly presented with lively examples and graphic illustrations drawn from the world of advertising and beyond. What are your thoughts on the concept of love marks?
But I think what Robert has done is really just use emotive language. It is nothing different than we have been using. I mean, let's take cricket for example. We love the glory days of what Clive Lloyd and Michael Holding and all those fellas did, Brian Lara. And it is that emotion why there's still a debate as to who is the best batsman in the world. And every time it comes up, why people still try to compare Pele with Maradona, it is still why people try to compare Michael Jordan with LeBron. And that conversation will go on and on. So it is that kind of emotion, it is that kind of mystery. Um, but it is also about no, because we're all bargaining and competing for the same dollar. It's that competitive edge. What makes my sport more exciting than yours, more competitive than yours, or in some cases, the mystery of it, what is the niche? The niche. So in other words, all right, so like in Jamaica, and I can say rugby isn't necessarily a major sport in Jamaica, but it has a market. And based on the schools that play it, they're in a particular geographical region. So everybody in that parish and region watches it. And so instead of saying to the marketer, we have a global or we have a national audience, no, we have we have an audience in the county. It is in the biggest parish in Jamaica, and so on. And so you have reasons to say what advantage you have. Not, and sometimes the numbers are not necessarily the best way to market. If your sport does well in the largest parish in Jamaica with the most schools, it means that if you have a product to sell in that particular area, use my sport to do it. So there are ways, and so it comes back to research. What I want to add though, Jeffrey, in my first book I wrote about distinguishing sports. So they're the national sports. So in Trinidad and Jamaica, we're pretty much similar. So it's cricket, track and field, football, netball for the women, and basketball. Those are the five major sports. And then you have what is called targeted sport. Those are the ones that you use to get, they play a one badminton player or a one swimmer that will reach a World Cup, and you play that until it dies. Or even within track and field, you're still promoting Keyshawn Walcott because he's one of the last world champions that we have had. Then there's the recreation that everybody plays. So, you do 5K walks. So that's a big thing now in Jamaica. Everybody participates in a walk. And then there's a network sport that, you somehow get yourself on global television. So you have to now put those together with the numbers and say, this is what the Trinidad and Tobago sport industry looks like. And we have categories of sport to get the support. But government policy has to speak to that. Because if somebody is not doing it from the top level to say it is a viable industry, then we're going to be flogging ourselves to death. So it is so mixed. I see Kairon laughing.
Carole, I do normally stop my guests when they're having a flu. But I asked this question. I really want to jump in and ask this question. How does social media fit into that mix that you just mentioned? Because you're speaking as regards to governments and everything that we have done, all our past episodes is coming to play because we had a post-budget review from a sporting industry standpoint. I know our guests were speaking to the fact that NSOs, NGBs are the ones who have to drive it. It's not government. It's not government. How does social media, now we're talking about sports marketing, how does social media fit into this conversation and that remark that you just made?
Some of the people we have making those, you combine a bit of the love marks. So, for example, call Brian and find out what he's doing. If he's not too busy running around the world watching cricket, and say, listen, become an ambassador for futsal for 6 months, for a year, and let him tweet, post on Facebook. Just say to him, Brian, listen, give back. You're well established in cricket. Form a deal with him. I'm sure probably TTST probably will be willing to even offer him a stipend because I mean we really can't pay Brian, but people will follow Brian, and if Brian is talking about whether it's politics, futsal, whatever, so you engage an ambassadorial type of a thing. Social media is still a strategy. You is pretty much like how we break down our audience. Some people are not on social media now, even in 2020, believe it or not. But what it does, it engages a new set of consumers. So it has to be used strategically in addition to the old-fashioned stuff that we do. Word of mouth is still the best thing. Believe it or not, it is still the old-fashioned thing that you do. But social media has to be part of the mix. It can't be used in isolation.
It's interesting you said that. So I had to come with some data. The team came up with some data, and this is hot off the press from Hot Suite. And let's see what our viewers think as regards to this. So based on what we're seeing is that the world's most used social media platforms, right? This is a graphic of the world's most used social media platforms. But Hot Suite just released a massive digital State of the Union report where they said that 5.2 billion of us now have phones globally, of which 4.5 billion are connected to the internet. 3.8 billion, which represents 49% of the planet's population, and is growing by 9%, and it grew, by 9% over the last year, are active social media users, Carole. And if it is, we break it down into regions. Let's look at regions. We see that the Caribbean has a high population of users. So tell me how does that data now fit into your last comment? Because I still believe that social media, yes, content is king. Constant content is also good, but content and context, for which we can speak about afterwards, is the magic. We all know this. But social media, I mean, I don't want to speak to the few people who don't have one of these. I want to speak to the people who, as the numbers just say, there's a lot more.
Yeah, but I also have data that says 3 out of every 10 person who uses social media, internet users, are sports fans. So it means, so of that 3 out of the 10, we have to break it down. All right. So my mom, who is 70, has a smartphone, right? But she's not prepared to watch her cricket match on her smartphone. She still wants to see it on the television. We are traveling because we're doing stuff. So we will watch it on our phones or on our tablet. As a matter of fact, my mother still wants to go to the cricket stadium to watch it. So only a T20, she might say, all right, because it's 3 hours, she's not necessarily going to go. But once it's a 1 day and a 5 day, she's going to cricket because it's the allure, it's the excitement. So we then have to break it down. My 26-year-old son, however, he's a basketball fan. So he'll watch an entire match. But a lot of young men his age only watch the last 2 minutes. So you have to think about how we compartmentalize our users. So those numbers are great. And yes, we know more people have access. But even me, I mean, I find it difficult to watch on a smartphone a full 2 hour or 3 hour broadcast. There's no way. First of all, the screen is too small. And so it is the trend of all of us. The three of us have three different ways how we consume sport, right? And so it is that, but it is also how do we combine that kind of data with the people who still want to read it in the newspaper, the people who turn on the television every evening at 7 o'clock to catch the news, or they will even leave the cricket or the football to go home and catch the local news because that is their thing. And so, as I said, the generation is changing. So we have to be able to figure that out. Who is our primary, secondary, and tertiary? So we have to do a mix, and that's where the marketing comes in because you have to know who you appeal to.
And I appreciate that. So to our audience, it's just not much about the data, but how do you use the data for us? And that comes to you, Kairon. And let's be specific to our NSOs and our NGBs and use this platform to be able to educate them a little more. Can you tell us or give your NSOs and NGBs a little more insight as regards to what you would like them to do when it comes to sports marketing? I know that we have the recommendation segment afterwards, but I want to speak more to just to highlight Carole's point and just give them examples of what it is you would like them to do when it comes to sports marketing, being a little bit more data driven, using social media and all the other items that Carole would have spoken to.
Carole, touched on some critical points, in her delivery just now with regard to the mix, and she's very right. Not because we have all this market penetration and so on. That means all your marketing now goes right across to social. I mean, you have to have a mix. You would have that audience that would prefer to either watch it on TV, whether it's the size of the screen or whatever. You still have that audience that would watch news to get sound bites and so on. You still have those people who read papers, believe it or not. People still buy papers, they still read papers, and they will want to see information or content, as you said, about your sport in all these different media and forms. So again, it's critical to understand that and to take all of that into consideration when you formulating your plan and then subsequently executing it. Funny you should ask about the NGV. So the sport company has a really close relationship, but we want it to be closer because we understand the challenges with resources and so on. I know we've attempted in the past to assist with on the communication side now, assist them with whatever initiative they may have because they may not have access to the media, or they may need some assistance to do things like press releases and so on, or even press conferences. So we assist where we can. What I would like them to do is, especially in these times with coronavirus and COVID, is forcing us to reassess and reevaluate how we do things. Look at where the opportunities are, right? And I'm not saying that the social is everything, but it's going to be a key component as the method of consumption will start to switch. And Carole mentioned a segment of the market that prefers conventional forms of consumption, but we have a younger age group that this is all they know, right? Viewing stuff on their phone, viewing stuff on Twitch, viewing stuff on YouTube. That's all they know. So we have to take all of that into consideration. And then with digital, I mean, I was having a conversation with some colleagues in the office just last week in terms of what some of the different platforms are and what opportunities they have. People might just say, well, on social media, on Facebook, but yes, you could be on Facebook, but does being on Facebook help or speak to your membership, or in terms of people that might be interested in your sport? I could say, yeah, I'm really good, but I'm on Snapchat, but you're on Snapchat and nobody paying attention. But what I would like the NGBs to do is to start looking at those opportunities, right? Start collecting the data, start looking at those opportunities. And if you say, well, Kairon, we don't have nobody for that, well, then let's see how we could solve that. Carole mentioned at the start in terms of university students, and let's see how best we could bring everyone together so that university students will have a hunger for knowledge. They want to make their mark. They want to know that they were part of something that helped with the marketing of a sport. Because if you talk to any university graduate, what do you want to do? Sports marketing. I say, well, it's there'll be opportunity for you to get in the belly of the beast, understand the product, understand the opportunity, and then see what we can do in terms of execution. The conversation this week was about things like TikTok. Is there an opportunity for TikTok? Everybody on TikTok, doing their little videos in music. There's an opportunity for Caribbean music as well, right? If Diddy's Belfort had one the other day that was very popular. But people are doing all their skills and so on. What is the opportunity for TikTok for our NGBs? Is that something that they should take a little more, pay a little more attention to? Everybody knows about Facebook. What are the opportunities for Twitter in terms of being able to live tweet if you're at an event? How am I going to live tweet and make sure that people know that, hey, this badminton match going good? I don't know, but there are opportunities, and I think right now the NGBs, even with the resource constraints, could be looking into these platforms to see how best it could help them further their agenda.
Now, my next question is supposed to speak about innovation in sport and sport marketing. But I decided I'm not going to do that. I want to ask both of you all, and I'm going to throw you in deep end here. Who in the Caribbean is doing it right when it comes to sport marketing? And who needs to step up their game? Because at the end of the day, from what is being said, if it is we don't get this right, guys, we will continue to operate in mediocrity. Is that fair to say? And if it's fair to say, who's doing it right? Who can be in the Caribbean? I know NBA is top of the line when it comes to sport marketing. I mean, Carole, you're a big follower. You have worked with them. The NFL, they're known. The US products. Who in the Caribbean is doing it right? Any one of you, both of you.
I would say CONCACAF to some extent has gotten it pretty much. The problem with football is that we have been unfortunately bothered with some corruption slash management issues, but I think CONCACAF has really gotten it right. CFU, I think football in the Caribbean still has the best opportunity for broadcast and awareness. Unfortunately, our West Indies cricket team has not performed well. I can claim some level of bias. I think digitally we have improved because I worked there, and while I was in the marketing department, we had started to redevelop our digital platforms. The young lady there now is at Trinidad. Oh my God, she would kill me if I forgot her name. Anyway, the digital manager, she we have developed tools and our analytics are doing very well, but we are doing better obviously in the global market. Here is something, you talk about throwing us in the deep end. We're what, 6 million people in the English speaking Caribbean. So outside of Cuba and Hispaniola, it's 6 million of us. And I tell you, that's not a big market. We're still smaller than Rhode Island. So that's not a tremendous amount of people. And we have enough issues to deal with. So sport is not necessarily, we have more fans outside of the region than we do inside for most of the sports we do well in. And so we have to bear that in mind, Jeffrey. And
yes.
So and our borders, unfortunately, CARICOM, CSME, all these things except for the University of the West Indies that have essentially not worked in our favor is an indication of how segmented we are. So don't knock ourselves too hard for that. I just think it's best that we niche market our stuff. So, and get a solid community that we have that can influence what goes out in the world. There are lots of former athletes that are doing very well in other things that I'm sure they're happy to give back. I mean, Trinidad and Jamaica have a whole lot of them, right? Russell, Dwight York, Brian, and all of those guys. And we have tons of them down here too. I just think they need to be engaged. And if you do that, because when you hear a former cricket star, Brian Lara, supports rugby in his country, first of all, it will make the news globally that this former cricket great is now supporting another sport. And believe it or not, the companies will pay Brian or Russell or Dwight to do something that probably Karen and I would have been trying to do as the persons who are in the sport, believe it or not. So sometimes you just have to sit back, think about it, but it doesn't preclude us from collecting the data that we have and speak to it authoritatively.
And that word pops up again. Data, data, and more data. It sounds like the same word it sounds like the word of 2020 outside of pivot. Kairon, can you add some value to Miss Beckford, please?
Yeah, I think it's important. Again, Carole started off by saying, in terms of our size and the market, we need to bear that in mind, because when we look at the international, the international examples of doing sport marketing. Remember, I started as well speaking about the resources that are required to do a proper marketing campaign or to do a sustained marketing campaign. You talk about the NFL, if it I don't know, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tom Brady is now, or even like you think about the Patriots, where you have now an owner, right, who's able to finance, you share in broadcast rights. Again, I just talk about the introduction of finance, that is now going to allow you to execute all of these programs so that you could, so someone watching now say, wow, sports marketing done in the US is great. But we honestly just don't have that scale, and we don't have that opportunity. So what we need to do, as Carole mentioned, is we do need to be collaborative, right? And we also do need to be creative. You asked in terms of who's doing it right. I don't know that there's one agency doing like full 100 out of 100, but I see attempts being made to improve. Carole mentioned CWI. That would have been one of my examples as well. You could see entities, more regional entities, trying to improve overall in terms of the marketing of the stakeholders, because now it's, and again, which is an important point, it's CWI, it's CONCACAF, it's not the Dominican Republic Federation. They might be doing some stuff, but it's now the confederation now taking that responsibility of attempting to, what is it, a rising tide raise all ships. They're trying to do that to raise everybody and to raise the awareness. So we have our challenges. I don't think we need to be too hard on ourselves, but we definitely do need to improve. And another point that Carole made in terms of CARICOM, if anybody asks me, they know that I am a big proponent of the Caribbean. Once we get things right, we could be the best in the world at everything, and make no apologies for that. I also think that we need to become a little more integrated, where CARICOM is concerned, in terms of really maximizing the English-speaking Caribbean as a population, so that now we're speaking to 6 million versus the 1.3 in Trinidad versus the 2.7 in Jamaica, and how much of in Barbados, etc., etc. I think that is also going to be important for us. In addition to expanding our abilities to speak to the Spanish speaking, to speak to the French speaking, to include them, as part of the market, so that there's just a larger pool of people where we could now hopefully invite the finance to be able to execute proper marketing campaigns and just start the system.
Karen, you want to know the story between Aston Villa and Arsenal?
No, thank you. No, thank you. That's just Jeffrey. Jeffrey has a point to make. No, thank you.
my little brother, whose birthday was yesterday, happy birthday, Greg. He's an Arsenal fan, and I think it's my fault, because when he was 2 years old, I bought him a Arsenal towel, and I think I have caused a curse to befall him. I don't know why they are fans. I don't know. They love pain, but so be it, But anyhow, as you continue the show, very interesting points, Karen, because when you look at the European Union and even the legalities that govern the European Union and their involvement in sport through the different treaties that speak to um, what is a legal person and even sportsmen and how sportsmen and sportswomen define and the movement of trade even when it comes to goods and services and these individuals is very amazing. And I think that we in the Caribbean need to adopt that to some extent, understanding who we are and adding value to the comments that you all made. It would just be to continue looking at sport facilities, which are important key performance drivers and adds to an organization's asset base. In the English-speaking Caribbean, most of the facilities are government-owned. It's only last week, Carole, that Ian would have said that in Jamaica is the opposite. But my question still remains, how can marketing be incorporated in and on these assets? Noting Kairon would have mentioned a little bit as regards to the NFL and the the Patriots and all of these stuff, and we see that they have naming rights and all these things are. But Kairon, I threw this question to you before I move on to Carole because of your position at Sport Company.
So in terms of, you're right, in Trinidad Tobago, the government is more or less the single largest owner of, well, that's yeah, the government, many people are trying to be the single largest owner of sporting facilities. As you may or may not be aware, because it's not private, the government is not in a position to, there are certain laws that govern how the facilities are run and so on. Those laws would have been in place from X amount of years before. Now that the industry has been evolving, I know there have been conversations in terms of how can we adjust or how can we take things into consideration to allow us to now, access possibly, naming rights and so on. That is something we have a conversation on a lot at Sport Company because we have the National Aquatic Center, we have the velodrome, we have the tennis center, we have the facility up in San Grande, Motor Road. We there are challenges in terms of getting the necessary funding to maintain and sustain on a regular basis. So the question is now, okay, what can we do? What happens outside? So then you talk about naming rights. You say, okay, cool. You look at how things are constructed, or at least naming rights agreements are constructed with the international agencies and see what is brought to bear. If you look at the different arenas, if you look at Gillette Stadium, for instance, it's buttressed by programming, right? And by programming, I mean they might have a franchise there that is now going to be engaging the community that might be 10 million, how many million strong, right? It's private, but you're now able to say, well, listen, based on the figures, we are likely to experience, based on last year's figures, 20,000 unique persons coming to my facility, twice a week for 30 weeks, right? We have the information, like Carole mentioned, we have the information on their spending patterns, which part of the state they're from, what they like, what they don't like, what they're more likely to do when they come. They might either buy one hot dog or two hot dogs, etc. So all of this, goes into, if you think about within the facility now, catering. You might decide, okay, you're going to sell the exclusive catering rights and pouring rights, and all of these things. You'd have had conversation on how can we do that in Trinidad? Can someone get pouring rights? But when you really break it down, because of the scale and sometimes the challenge in being able to develop a strong program, sport program, and by program I mean constant events with regularity, to now sell, to make it attractive for the facilities, that listen, you're going to get X amount of eyes here, these are the people that come in. It makes sense for you to give us $5 million per year to put your name on the facility. So it is something that we are definitely look at, and we are trying to deconstruct to see how best it could apply to our situation. Bear in mind, but being very honest, that we have our own challenges to now get what would really be the true worth of a naming rights facility for any of the facilities. So again, it's we know what's happening outside, but we also know or also aware of what our challenges are in terms of being a market. And yes, Trinidadians like sports, but some people might argue that we're not as passionate about sport as people would like to think we are. right? So we also have that kind of socio-cultural challenge in terms of getting genuine fans and people want to come out regularly, which we can now sell to a corporate entity and say, listen, this is how regular people come in. This makes sense for you. So again, just to say, we have things to consider, but we're trying to work it out.
Carole, what does your research say?
All right. So normally, when I think of like the American Airlines Arena, which is where the Miami Heat plays, right? It is in a path. So outside of the June, October to June, give or take the full length of the NBA season. Um, so there are those months, but otherwise they have shows in there. So it must be multi. The facilities must be able to host multiple events. Also, even during the season, there's also an opportunity for shows. When I listen to Kairon talking about the pouring rights and what people drink, what they eat, and so on, even a simple thing as the people who come there, what kind of cars they drive, because you can then say to a dealer, probably on a good day when it's not raining, come and do a car wash. There are so many opportunities that we are not even thinking of, and the basic consumer when they come to sports, which goes back to your sport tourist referee. When we travel to go to a place, we want the best of the food, we want the best of the entertainment. And food we will eat 2, 3 times a day. We want to see the best of entertainment. So there are two major areas. That means we're consuming things that are after the people who we want to invest. If you go for a 3-hour game, you'll probably eat twice. And if it's a situation where you can get up and go, so there are so many little things, but I don't think we give ourselves enough credit to do the actual research. And that is where our youngsters come in. I mean, you can email people. Uh, Listen, I went to a Marlins game probably 4 or 5 years ago, right? Because Derek Jeter had bought them just when he did. And I like Derek Jeter. I hate the Marlins. I don't think they can play. But because I follow the New York Yankees and he has now bought the Marlins, I decided to go to a game. I still get an email from the Marlins day, every day. And I gave them a particular email address, of course, because I wouldn't want it filling up my box. But I get an email. We're not that consistent, right? I know you say it's hard work, but it's easy. So, the smartphones, you scan the smartphones, you send a text, you can do it through TSTT, Digital Flow, whomever you have. And listen, I'm the kind of consumer, I don't necessarily read text, but there are some people who do. And so you have to be able to put an infrastructure in place to meet your audience halfway. And so you have the data. So when you sit down in front of a drink company, you can say that our ages are 0 to 75, but the maximum amount of products that you're going to sell are to the 25 to 45 age group. They will even go outside and have a drink. They will stay after the game, after the stadium has closed. So there are some trends and practices, but we just have to be willing to invest upfront in research. And that's a big part of development plans these days.
So, unlike the Arsenal Aston Villa game, we are going to a little extra time. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing recommendations and suggestions from Ms. Carole Beckford and Mr. Kairon Serrette as regards to sport marketing and Caribbean sporting organizations. You're watching Futsal868 Corner Talks, Sunday afternoon. We'll be right back.
Jerusalem, ikayalami, ilonoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana, dawo yami, ayikholana, buso wami, awukholana, ilondoloze.
Yeah, that song always gets me. And sorry, Kairon, but I just to you and to my brother, we salute you all in terms of your tenacity to support such a team. We take a drink for you all. Well, Futsal 868 branded bottle, of course. Cheers. It has been a pleasure. I mean, we could go on and on and on. I really hope that to our viewers who are watching this live and who will be watching this later on have really been able to get a little bit of insight as regards to sport marketing and more so into the beautiful Caribbean, sand, sun, and sea. And I would like to get some closing remarks, suggestions, recommendations from each one of you as regards to what sporting organizations in the Caribbean can do to be able to help better. I mean, we spoke a lot to it, but a little summary to end in this beautiful Sunday afternoon episode of Futsal 868 Corner Talks, as well as Ms. Beckford. Please do share information as regards to your upcoming book, that and how can we be able to acquire such wealth of knowledge to be able to add to our library. I have mine. I need to add another book there. So tell us. We will definitely want to have it on our shelves. So Ms. Beckford, ladies first.
Okay. Oh, the second book is still available. It's on bookfusion.com. Bookfusion.com. It is about Jamaican sport tourism. Jamaica is in sport and tourism. But the third book is really about the ABCs of Caribbean sport, marketing and sports psychology. I've co-authored it with a sports psychologist. So it is A to Z about sports marketing, and I've mixed it up. I've spoken about advertising, commercials, distribution, you name it, A to Z. It's kind of it's more of a lifestyle book, but it does have a tremendous amount of data. I use the CPL, for example, as an example. I talk about imagery, jobs in sport. Queen's Park Oval is featured heavily in the book, sir. It is my Q. That Queen's Park Oval is a Q feature. That should be out in February. Could be out before, but I'm taking my time. Some of the suggestions, though, that I'd like to make. I think now is an ideal time for sports ministers of the Caribbean to meet. The sports ministers of the Caribbean deserve to actually meet and look at how sport can be developed in the region. And they should meet with planners. So they should meet with Kairon, all the heads of Kairon's firms across the region. And so that's what, 28 people. Zoom can hold 100 people. I think now is a good time before we go into the next Olympics, the next round of football, netball, and so on. And really look at the population, look at the trends, look at the things, how we've developed, and so on. And really just put some ideas together. The free movement of sport officials across the region. I mean, as somebody who has worked with Cricket West Indies, the amount of trouble that I've had to go through when I lived in Antigua. When I say trouble, so yes, we have a work permit and so on. But CARICOM, there's no agreement, or the agreement exists on paper, but it doesn't agree in principle. And so Trinidad has experts in certain areas. Jamaica has expertise in certain areas. So does Barbados, Martinique, the Dutch Caribbean countries, as Kairon said. And so we just need to be planning. We can't go into the next round of major world championships in all the sport that we're going in. As individuals, 6 million population, the smallest states in the US are bigger than us. And so if we don't plan, we're going to be in serious trouble. One, we don't have the financial resources, right? So, and two, our products need the exposure. Imagine if we have some of our best athletes. One guy, Chris Gayle has what, 4 million people on his Instagram. No, not Instagram, Twitter. I won't tell you, his daily posts get over 200,000 on Instagram for any like, whatever he does. Imagine if we had just a combination of some of our athletes doing the things. But one of the things that they don't do, Jeffrey, and I'm going to say this honestly, is that they don't like to pay the athletes. They don't like to pay the athletes. They don't like to invest in the athletes. Chris Gayle can play 8 weeks of cricket in the IPL and probably get 100,000 US, whether he sits on the bench or not. We're not asking you to pay him a salary, but offer him a sizable amount that he will do the work, but don't ask him to do it free. Do not beg the athletes to do the work free. And so we just have to decide that, listen, if we're going to compete, we're going to have to be strategic. So plan, we have the athletes, we have the officials, we have the coaches, use the concept of what cricket is using. Although the guy is not playing as great as we would like him to, but that model still works. And I'm saying if we do that for all our sports, even if we compete individually, we will do better.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beckford. It has been an honor. Mr. Serrette?
Close off, I'm glad. Just as you're going to the break, Carole, there's some hearty laughter there at Arsenal's fortune today, but that's all right. That's all right. We've been doing well, and this is, I consider this a bump in the road. But just to continue to add, as I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in the need for the CARICOM integration collaboration. I think that is going to be critical. I think I think that's a good idea, Carole, and just to give myself more work, I think I'm going to speak with my CEO, my chairman, and see if we could have an audience with our minister to see if we could have something like that, if they'll be open to it via Zoom, etc., so that we could start planning. I think that is key, and as you mentioned, we should not exclude language or otherwise our Dutch-speaking neighbors or French-speaking neighbors. From a strategic standpoint, and I'll make the plug in for Trinidad Tobago, I think we are key in that, especially from the facilities. We have our aquatic center, with diving capabilities, and the Mercer pool. We have our cycling velodrome. We have our tennis center. So from a strategic standpoint, we've made that investment. And now that Trinidad has made the investment, that means the rest of the Caribbean don't need to make that investment. You all could come here and be part, and let's structure our sport development around the facilities here, and let us help each other, basically from utilization standpoint to just sustainability and growing. I think in terms of the NGBs, I would say it really is a time now to take stock. Carole mentioned before in terms of understanding who your stakeholders are, who your audience is, do the research, collaborate, ask for help, and be open to it. I know you spoke about the governance structure. I might tend to agree with Carole in terms of it's very hierarchical, but in terms of being open to getting assistance so that we could really include or engage our sport marketing, young sport marketing professionals who want to make a difference. So to the NGBs, there's an opportunity. It's not, yes, finance is an issue. Yes, it might depend on the government. Yes, corporate might be watching their dollars, but there's still an opportunity for us to plan. These times are not going to last forever, but we want to know that once, there's some sunlight on your horizon, we'll be in a position to really maximize and exploit.
Ms. Beckford, Mr. Serrette, it has been a pleasure and an honor to have you all spend Sunday afternoon with me. And thank you very much. As regards to this matter when it comes to COVID-19, we ask that God richly bless you all and protect you all and your families during this difficult time. And we pray that you all stay strong. Mr. Serrette, you had something to say, sir?
Yeah, and then said just in the same vein of the collaboration, if anybody who's watching and wants to reach out to discuss, in terms of how they could get involved from the Trinidad standpoint, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and so on, and I'm always happy to engage anyone who has ideas or who wants to collaborate or who wants to move the thing forward. I'd also like to say thanks, Jeffrey, because I would have been a fan of Ms. Beckford's since I came back to the Caribbean in 2010. You'll always be looking at, okay, so who's involved in sports marketing or sports management in a certain way, and Carole Beckford is a name that I would have seen come up regularly if it's through interaction with Usain. I know you were part of Usain's camp early in the days. I would have seen you. I would have been getting communications from CWI or WICB then, and I always seen Carole Beckford. So You know, I'm glad I got this opportunity to share a platform, although she laughed at my heart for Arsenal. But still, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So thanks again, Jeffrey.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Karen. I never would have known. And I used to come to Trinidad so often.
It's the same thing with myself, Karen. I'll be honest with you. Even though I was in the oil and gas industry, I still, you know my story, Karen, in terms of love for sport. And the business of sport that you had, Ms. Beckford, was something that I think we still miss in the Caribbean. And this talks is trying to emulate in some instance what it is you do in terms of educating our stakeholders. So I too have been a fan of it. I mean, I think I would have sent you emails years ago as regards to, how can we revive the business of sport. That would have been in the SW Touring days of conversations, and that was years. I'm talking about over 4 or 5 years of conversation. So yes, I too have been a fan of your work, and I want to say thank you very much. It was also interesting to know that you didn't even recognize that when I asked you what was your title, and you just simply say sport marketing specialist. I was like, that's humility. Even when it came to your bio and you asked me to cut it down, I was like, that's humility. And I want to thank you very much for this the humility that you have given to us. And as you can see, you have 2 young men who are very much look forward to what it is you have done and look forward to what it is you're going to do. So we definitely want to be a part of that journey.
All right, thank you. No, this has been incredible. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. And to all, just let you all know that Ms. Beckford's book will be out in March 2021, and we will put it up on our social media, whereby you can get the second book on bookfusion.com. Check it out. Jamaica is in sports and tourism.
Right.
Yes. So we definitely want to thank you very much to all, and do have a good afternoon. As always, so to you, Carole, and to Kairon, do have a great, great, great week ahead. And it has been a pleasure. Thanks again.
All right.
See you all soon.
Take care.
Bye.
So once again, that has been a great, great, great episode of Futsal868 Corner Talks. And we want to say thank you very much for being a part of it. And as one of our viewers have said, yes, engagement is the key. And we hope that for it all, that engagement was the key this afternoon. And as always, as you know, how we end our show, we want to keep our feet on the neck of racism.
It is our responsibility to commit to making a positive difference in our society.
Listen, read,
and be a standing voice against discrimination
and injustices. I am Yannick Quintal.
I am Joash Webb.
I am Neil Pro.
I am Kevin Usman.
I am Safia Sylvester, and racism
ends
with me.
So yes, racism ends with me, and I ask that it ends with you as well, because stronger together. That's our tagline, that's our motto. Hope that you will have a blessed week ahead. You have been watching Futsal868 Corner Talks. Catch recaps of it on our social media pages, Instagram, and also Facebook, as well as YouTube. Have a good afternoon.